owner of the Villa Group at Summit Funding. Today I am here in Berkeley at the Sotheby's office with the notorious Anthony Cassel, rock star agent and overall a fairly cool guy. I'm not going to say very cool, but I'll say fairly cool.
There you go.
Anthony, year after year, top producer at Sotheby's, just an amazing volume, an amazing agent, and I think that anytime anyone enters into a competition to win a listing against you, I think they automatically fly the white flag in defeat.
Thanks. That's good to know. That's why it's been so easy.
That's why. So as far as like winning listings, and so you not only command a great price, setting records for every listing that you get in the neighborhoods that you get them, but ultimately winning a listing. How do you do it with such great success and such great consistency?
Number one key is listening. Going in from the time the meeting starts till the end of the meeting, you really have to key in a certain verbiage and how people respond and body language. That's something that is hard to train, but once you start really taking the time to listen and pay attention, instead of just spitting out everything that you want to spit out, you can usually pick up, what the key areas are that they're looking for. I mean, it's important, obviously, to go in, be polished, present things, make when you walk in with confidence and you know what you're doing, or at least make it seem like you know what you're doing. Those things are all key. But really, these listing meetings, mine usually take a long time. I usually do 2 meetings if I can.
Why 2?
But it's just my style. I like to really have a good understanding from the first meeting and then come back and, if somebody tries to pigeonhole me into, a price at that time, very rarely does that happen. I try to explain, hey, this is the reason why I'll come back and do a presentation. And what is interesting, I will say recently, is because my first meetings have been longer, there's been more times lately that I haven't had to do a second meeting.
Okay.
I used to always just push for a second meeting and do a second meeting where I come back and do a full electronic presentation.
So the first meeting is like a reconnaissance meeting.
Yeah. My first meetings. My first meetings are typically, I go in, I meet with the client, I get to know them. It's just a lot of times I like this walk through the house first, and then sit down and get to know them. Why they're selling, who they are, what they're about, see if we're a good fit working together, try to have a conversation, like even before we started this video, how we were joking around, and see if they have a good personality and I want to work with them.
Okay.
There's times, not everybody does this. There's times I turn down listings because I don't like the person or I think it's not going to fit the business model.
All right. Now, as far as you said, one of the keys is listening.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a few select questions you ask every time that, like I said, helps you build the story and that understanding?
I mean, one good one is, what is your understanding of this business? And selling a house. What's your experience? How many homes have you sold? Some people have sold a lot of homes and they've met with a lot of agents. And I said, well, if somebody says that, well, this is my 10th home I'm selling. Wow, that's a lot of homes. So you've worked with a lot of agents in the past. What have been the things you've liked the best working with them? What have been the things you've liked the least? Maybe not at that exact verbiage, but something to that effect. Or, what are you looking for in the agent that you work with this time around? And then what else? It's good to know how they heard about you. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it turns out to be a referral, or sometimes it might be, well, I saw that you sold this house over here. Good case in point is we were talking about a house. I have to go back for a listing that I just got tomorrow to this house, and when I was meeting with them a couple weeks ago, they were like, oh, we remember you sold this house on Evergreen around the corner. And I was like, well, actually, I sold the house next to that and the house down the street from that too. And it was the way the conversation went. It wasn't coming off as cocky. It was just saying, actually, I sold these other homes around the corner too, and we did something similar. to how we got them ready for market, and so it just naturally led into more information, and that made it easy to show like I do a lot of business in the area, which can be very important to some people.
An impressive resume.
Yeah. So it's just listening and then asking, purposeful questions. It's good to make sure that you like the person and they like you and your personalities mix, but then also asking those key, purposeful questions. I ask people, what do they think their house is worth? Where do you get that? I was like, listen, I'm going to be very transparent with you and tell you exactly what I think. And, obviously we don't know what the market will be in 3-4 months from now when you're ready to go on the market, but we'll sit down and we'll be able to talk through it together and finalize a number. And, but as of today, what do you think your house is worth and why?
Okay.
People have lived in that house for a very long time, and they know a lot about that house, and they're bringing us in as a listing agent. The very first meeting, you're there for what, an hour? I'm there sometimes for 2 hours, 2.5 hours on the first meeting. But let's say you're there for an hour. You're not going to know everything about that house in the first hour. As much as you do this, and as much as you think you're the expert, it's still good to ask them for their opinion and what they think.
Okay.
And then, and I tell them, I was like, the more I come back to the house and get to know the house, by the time we go on the market, I'll be ready.
Okay. Now, when you do have that presentation, so you have the kind of the first meeting, or sometimes a majority of that only meeting is getting kind of a feel, understanding, getting to know each other. Now, when you come back with, say, the actual presentation, do you have kind of a polished presentation that you present every time? Like, what does that presentation look like?
My last, so I have a presentation that I open up my laptop. It's on PowerPoint. I customize it to each property. But like I said recently, I haven't had, I've been lucky. I haven't had to go to a second meeting. By the end of the first meeting, they want to move forward. But when I go through that second meeting, it's a pretty detailed explaining. I talk about, what I try to tell them is I say, based on everything I'm seeing with this house in this presentation, it's very market driven. It's very about how I'm going to get the most amount of people to your home to, for excitement, fear of loss, all those things that play into driving up the price and getting the most attention, which leads into the most amount of offers. So the most of it is directed toward marketing and how to generate prospects and how to generate people that are just looking.
Right.
How important I think that can be at an open house. There was a time where there was probably a lot less serious buyers going to open houses, but in the industry in general, and then especially in the Bay Area, there's a lot of serious buyers that come to our open houses now. And so if they're coming before they do a private tour with their agent and look at it, more and more, when they're at that open house, if you can drive a bunch of people there that are just looking and just curious, it still gives that person that's serious a fear of loss.
Right.
Like of, hey, wow, look at all these other people that are interested. I'm going to have to write a strong number on this house.
All right.
Or something to that effect.
I like that.
Thanks.
Now, I feel like you're also being a little bit modest in the sense that, hey, you got lucky and I haven't had to have that second meeting here recently. So in that modesty, we're going to try and dive in a little deeper. What do you think?
I'll answer as much as I can. I can only answer so much because, the rest you have to pay the seminar fee.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course. I'm cheap, so I'm not going to pay for the seminar fee. So I'm just trying to get little pieces.
Well,
But like I said,
Negronis will help too.
Negronis, that's how we're always barter Negronis. As far as, like I said, what you think led to getting lucky, I'm sure every scenario is a little bit different, but what do you think has got people to commit to you in that first meeting as opposed to having to have a 2-meeting process?
Well, if we hit it off and we're talking long enough, eventually it just comes down to, getting them to say, okay, what are the next steps or something to that effect. When they say that, it's like, okay, I got it.
Okay.
It's pretty much, well, we move forward with the listing agreement. And I used to, when I first started out, I tried it a couple different ways. So when I first came into this business, brokering residential real estate, I was very aggressive my first few listing presentations, and I would just go through and just pull out the listing agreement and start moving forward like it's a done deal, assuming the sale, which I do a lot anyway. It's just a little different. I already assume that I have the listing before I go in the door.
Okay.
That's also, it's part of confidence and the mentality, and I've done that.
How do you do that without
business.
without having a pompous persona to you, so that confident instead of cocky?
I think show up to the listing early, get into the right mental state, and you go in the door and you are an expert in your field. If you've taken the time and really care about what you're doing, you're an expert in your field. And so, that, again, you just don't go in cocky, but, I assume that I'm going to get it. So when I'm having a conversation with them and we're talking about through the house. So when we go on the market, when we do this, everything is about and we'll, and I'll put in some key things and see how their body language is. When I'll say, okay, well, what we'll do is in 2-3 months before we go on the open market, we'll finalize the price together. We can either do that in writing or by email or and agree on that. But because you would agree with that, right? Yeah. And it's also too just getting them on the same page to agree with everything you're saying.
Right.
And you just assume that, hey, we're on the same page.
I like that. That's a great sales technique, and it's also we were turning an I and you into a we.
Yeah.
And then all right,
We're a team.
all right. I see what you're doing there.
We're all family.
All right. So if you were to say, and you were to boil it down to one thing that you would recommend that every agent does going into a listing presentation, that would potentially up their chances of success at conversion, what do you think the one thing is that you'd recommend? Obviously, you're kind of a special beast in yourself.
One thing I would recommend to make sure they get the listing every time. That's a tough one. I think it's honestly, I think it's a combination of things you have to do.
A, don't compete against you, but what's the B?
I think the important parts of my presentation, which is why I get it on the sometimes the first meeting, and some agents, they just do one meeting, but why now I just get it on the first meeting even a lot of times without asking for business is because I've gotten it down to, at least I feel I've gotten it down to a science where when I'm coming in the door, I'm relaxed. I'm assuming the sale at the same time, but not being pompous. Hopefully I'm not being pompous, not trying to. But then along with the combination of my presentation, along with the additional information that I leave with them and kind of just give a quick overview on, I validate myself showing work that I've done and work I've done in the area. Very personable, easy to talk to. I think there are two key things. And then just, making the process make sense from start to finish before you leave. What else can I tell you that I think works really well? I think they're really the key things, and just listening.
All right.
There isn't one thing. I think if I said one thing, it wouldn't do that.
It's a combination of things.
Yeah, it's really hard to say what the one thing is because it's not like I just say, okay, sign now. There's just too many things.
If only it was that one thing.
And in the beginning, for people that are just getting started in our office, and I'm sure people have done this in other offices, I went around and asked when I first started, and then they started saying at the meetings, hey, if you want to show sales as an office and kind of do like a royal we, like this is what we've done in our office. Because one thing I've noticed is some agents that are trying to get in listings, hey, I haven't sold anything.
Right.
So it doesn't hurt to, for the new people, and I'm always happy in my office if they want to use some of my sales to say, hey, this is what we've done in sales. Just don't say that I was the listing agent on this because that could backfire if they start looking up your name. You don't want to be dishonest.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's, and I think, if you feel like you're not connecting on the first meeting with them, I would really just, I would be careful. I know there's a lot of people that used to say, get every listing you possibly can, and some people still have that mentality, and that's fine. My business model is a little different because I'm very sensitive to my time. As you know, I've had years where I'm here most of the year, and I've had years where I'm here part of the year, and I have to make sure when I'm here that I'm doing the most I can with my time. And so I found that if you work with somebody that you don't bond with and you're not on the same page with, by the end of the first meeting, at the very least by the end of that second meeting, unless you get really lucky and it's a really perfect property, it's going to be difficult, and it's going to take more. A lot of times I think it takes more time to deal with people that are a pain than it is to just move on and focus on the people that work, that you have a good gut feeling about and you're connecting with. And
Now to dive into that a little bit more, say you're not connecting with somebody in that first meeting, do you just say, hey, we're going to go for a second meeting and regroup, or do you try and leave that meeting with some sort of connection before you go to that second one?
Still set up a second meeting, I think, and because you may be off on your game that first meeting, maybe you showed up late, or showed up on time, which is late, especially for a listing presentation, because mentally you got to make sure you're relaxed, you're not super excited. So if you're just rushing to a meeting, you get there right at the minute. I feel that's not a good way to. You need to be in the zone and ready. Meditate a little bit.
All right.
But if the first meeting, if it's just a matter of feeling like something's a little off, whether it's something's going on in the potential client's head, or something's going on in your head, and the chemistry is just not quite there yet, I would still give it a second meeting. If you walk through the property with the person, and at the end of the meeting you think that person is a jerk, that's your call. I wouldn't take it. I mean, I've pushed it off and said, hey, we can circle back and talk, and I've turned down listings many times because I just, for one reason or another, I just didn't agree. Like, I didn't feel like either that our personalities aligned or our morals didn't align, or, there's people out there that'll ask you to do things, and you have to make that decision.
I like it. I think that we got plenty of material to use, which is great. How do you feel about it?
I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Easy. That's it. Totally painless.
Yeah. I was trying to think if there was like one thing. You got me on the one thing because it's such a complicated. It's hard to be a good listing agent, I think.
Well, I mean, it's hard to be a good listing agent, but it might be a little easier to win a listing.
Yeah.
To be a good listing agent, so a whole another subject.
Or even winning a listing. That's true. I think it's winning a listing is not easy.
Yeah.
There's not like a ton of listing agents that do a lot of listings. There's a small percentage.
Correct. Yeah. Because they are good at it, and they have that track record, and because they can go into that
Just
meeting
trying to think of that
and win
one
there.
thing. I can't think of it. Sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. Like I said, that's definitely enough for us to work with.
I think the big one is concentrating on. I don't know if it came off the right way, but really taking time to listen to what they're saying and verbiage, and then once you kind of start listening to that, you should kind of know how to turn the conversation into what you want, like key things you want to get into their head about. You want to plant. There's seeds you may want to plant when you're having a conversation. If you pick up on, hey, they're the kind of person that likes to focus on these they want something they want an agent that's won a lot of awards or something like that. They have that kind of personality. You can keep, even if you haven't won awards, you can talk about, our top producing office, and
they'll give you signals, and
there's signals.
And just being, like you said, listening and being in tune.
How to
those
direct
signals.
that conversation. It's
Okay.
the same when I hold open houses and I do tours. I've sold homes that have been listed multiple times in the past, and then I've taken it on, and I set up personal tours sometimes because I want to control how things have gone, and usually there is I'll already have an understanding of what potential rebuttals or what negatives will be about the house from the previous times it was on the market, like things I can't change but they're there, and what my rebuttals, or how to put things in a positive light when I see as I'm going through a tour on body language. And same thing when you're walking around a house, you pick up on body language.
That's really
you just
smart.
have to be a little quicker than you do when you're preparing for an open house.
Yes, you have to be reading it at the time. All right,
at the time.
That's actually really, really smart.
Yeah. So did you get that too?
I like it.
Yeah. I was gonna say blackmail, but what's your one key? Blackmail.
Blackmail.
It's pretty simple. Blackmail. Yeah, I tell people, I show them what I have, and then they look at it, and I just say, hey, I'll make you an offer.
Part of the team is having a private investigator. He's the most important priest that we have on the team, and then he just does all the reconnaissance that I need to win the listing every time.
I say, hey, listen, I grew up north of Philadelphia from part of half Italian family. I have to watch The Godfather for Christmas every year. I make you an offer. I make them an offer they can't refuse. That's what it comes down to.
I like it.